The Constitution. The supreme law of the United States of America, originally comprising 7 articles, delineates the national frame of government, ratified June 21, 1788, date effective March 4, 1789. Bill of Rights comprises the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution. They protect 5 of the most basic liberties: freedom of religion, speech, press, assembly, and the petition to govern to right wrongs. Neutrality, the tendency not to slide into conflict, which may not suggest neutral parties do not have a side or not a side themselves.
Revolution of
1800. Vice President Thomas Jefferson of the Democratic Republican Party defeated incumbent President John Adams of the Federalist Party, October 31st, 1800 through December 3rd, 1800. Nullification crisis. A legal theory that a state has the right to nullify or invalidate any federal law which that a state has deemed unconstitutional with respect to the U.S. Constitution.
Important people. Daniel Shays. Daniel Shays was an American soldier, revolutionary, and farmer, famous for being one of the leaders and namesake of Shays' Rebellion, a populist uprising against controversial debt collection and tax policies in Massachusetts in 1786 and 1787. James Madison. James Madison was an American statesman, lawyer, diplomat, philosopher, and founding father who served as the 4th President of the United States from 1809 to 1817. Second Continental Congress. Initially, the Second Continental Congress was a meeting of delegates from 12 of the 13 British colonies that would ultimately join in the Revolutionary War that convened on May 10, 1775 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, shortly after the battles of Lexington and Concord. George Washington. George Washington was an American political leader, military general, statesman, and founding father who also served as the first president of the United States from 1789 to 1797. John Adams, an American statesman, attorney, diplomat, writer, and founding father who served as the second president of the United States from 1797 to 1801. John Jay was an American statesman, patriot, diplomat, and one of the founding fathers of the United States. Negotiator and signatory of the Treaty of Paris of 1783, second governor of New York, and the first Chief Justice of the United States. Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson was an American statesman, diplomat, lawyer, architect, and founding father who served as the 3rd President of the United States from 1801 to 1809. Previously, he had served as the 2nd Vice President of the United States from 1797 to 1801. Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton was an American statesman and one of the founding fathers of the United States. He was an influential interpreter and promoter of the U.S. Constitution, as well as the founder of the nation's financial system, the Federalist Party, the United States Coast Guard, and the New York Post newspaper. John Marshall. John James Marshall was an American politician and lawyer who served as the 4th Chief Justice of the United States from 1801 to 1835. And Lewis and Clark. The Lewis and Clark expedition from 1804 to September 1806, also known as the Corps of Discovery expedition, was the first American expedition to cross the western portion of the United States. Laws, treaties, and court cases. John Jay's Treaty from 1794 to 95 on November 19th, 1794, representatives of the United States and Great Britain signed Jay's Treaty, which sought to settle outstanding issues between the two countries that had been left unresolved since American independence. The Alien and Sedition Act. A series of laws known collectively as the Alien and Sedition Acts were passed by the Federalist Congress in 1798 and signed into law by President Adams. These laws included new powers to deport foreigners as well as making it harder for new immigrants to vote. Treaty of Ghent. The Treaty of Ghent was the peace treaty that ended the War of 1812 between the United States of America and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. Both sides signed it on December 24, 1814, in the city of Ghent. Judiciary Act of 1801 was a partisan political attempt by Federalists in Congress and the John Adams administration to pack the federal courts with Federalists. In this spirit, they passed the Federal Judiciary Act of 1801. The act reduced the number of Supreme Court justices from the original 6 to 5.
Constitutional Convention, the gathering for the purpose of writing a new constitution or revising an existing one. This was where George Washington was unanimously elected as president. Washington's Proclamation of Neutrality. Formal announcement issued by Washington that declared the nation neutral in the conflict between France and Great Britain. Hamilton's financial plan. Retired old depreciated obligations by borrowing new money at a lower interest rate. Judiciary Act of 1789. I don't know what that says. Act of 1789, an act to establish the judicial courts. Marbury versus Madison, court case that established the principle of judicial review, meaning the courts have the power to strike down laws, statutes, and some government actions against the Constitution. Pinckney's Treaty with Spain. Established intentions of friendship between the U.S. and Spain.
The Hartford Convention was a series of meetings from December 15, 1814 to January 5, 1815 in Hartford, Connecticut, United States, in which the New England Federalist parties met to discuss their grievances concerning the ongoing War of 1812 and the political problems arising from the federal government's increasing power. The convention discussed removing the Three-Fifths Compromise, which gave slave states disproportionate power in Congress and requiring a 2/3 majority in Congress for the admission of new states' declarations of war and creating laws restricting trade. The Federalists also discussed their grievances with the Louisiana Purchase and the embargo of 1807. However, weeks after the convention's end, news of Major General Andrew Jackson's overwhelming victory in New Orleans swept over the Northeast, discrediting and disgracing the Federalists, resulting in their elimination as a major national political force. War of 1812, a conflict fought between the United States, the United Kingdom, and their respective allies from June 1812 to February 1815. Historians in Britain often see it as a minor theater of the Napoleonic Wars in the United States and Canada. It is seen as a war in its own right. Whiskey Rebellion. The Whiskey Rebellion was a tax protest in the United States beginning in 1791 and ending in 1794 during the presidency of George Washington, ultimately under the command of American Revolutionary War veteran Major James McFarland. Great Compromise. The Connecticut Compromise was an agreement that large and small states reached during the Constitutional Convention of 1787 that in part defined the legislative structure and representation that each state would have under the United States Constitution. XYZ Affair. The XYZ Affair was a political and diplomatic episode in 1797 and 1798, early in the presidency of John Adams, involving a confrontation between the United States and Republican France that led to the Quasi-War. Battle of New Orleans. The Battle of New Orleans was fought on January 8, 1815 between the British Army under Major General Sir Edward Pakenham and the United States Army under Brevet Major General Andrew Jackson.
Rebellion was the name given to a series of protests in 1786 and 1787 by American farmers against state and local enforcement of tax collection and judgment for debt. Federalist Papers, a collection of essays written under the pseudonym Publius by Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, James Madison, addressed to the people of the state of New York. Washington's farewell address, a statement that President George Washington published in a Philadelphia newspaper in 1796 to announce that he would not run for third term and to give his views on foreign and domestic policy. The Three-Fifths Compromise resolved the controversial issue of appointment that was raised at the Constitutional Convention. The Constitution, the basic written sets of principles and precedents of federal government in the U.S. that started in 1787. It since has been modified by 27 amendments. The Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution ratified in 1791 and guaranteeing such rights as the freedoms of speech, assembly, and worship. The Kentucky and Virginia resolutions were political statements drafted in 1798 and 1799